Welcome to another edition of Dan Frequently Asked Questions. In this edition, we'll be discussing emphysema and diving. Keep watching. We got a question from a diver asking on behalf of his colleague who's been diagnosed with emphysema and only been prescribed an inhaler, whether or not scuba diving would be a safe sport for them. Well, I'm going to start off with a more broad understanding. Emphysema is usually a complication related to smoking, although there are inherited disorders that can also cause it, that will have a completely different risk profile. But let's assume that it's the result of smoking. And in emphysema, what happens is that the individual little grape sacs or alveoli in the lung are ripped apart and coalesce. In other words, a whole bunch of grapes, if you'd like to use the analogy, become essentially a cluster of cavities. The danger with emphysema is that not only does one have the disruption of the alveoli, but you also have destruction of lung tissue, scar tissue, and therefore a risk of air trapping as well as inadequate gas exchange. Now, an inhaler may assist in allowing the lungs to empty, but it still doesn't fix the underlying problem. There is an overlap between asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, of which emphysema is one particular kind, and so it will require a proper assessment by a pulmonologist and a diving medical expert. But in brief, if a person has emphysema and they are still able to exercise normally, in other words, they can exercise to, for instance, 9 times metabolic basal rate, which would translate to about 9 kilometers per hour on a treadmill. So if they're able to exercise and they have a reasonable amount of fitness, then the chances are that they might be fit to dive. However, even if they are approved by a diving physician and pulmonologist, they should not undertake deep diving. They should plan for very gentle and gradual ascents. And if ever they have an experience of tight-chestedness in relation to a dive, prior to the dive they should not dive, and if it's subsequent to a dive, they should seek medical attention. Perhaps the most important thing, if this isn't already in place, the person should stop smoking. And I hope that gives you a framework with which to address this. Thank you for your question, and until next time, safe diving.